Hey, everybody, it is Thursday night, and that means it's time for a 49ers roundtable. This is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and with me, I got a really good group with me tonight. I have Aaron from 49ers First Takes. He's there next to me. Right below me is Bashar from 49ers Minded on YouTube. And then right to the corner there between Bashar and Aaron is Ted. Ted, we didn't realize that you were a real person. We thought you were just an avatar.
We could barely see him, too.
I'm a real person. I can turn up the lights in here, so I guess I got too much backlighting.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. But not a problem. Hey, I'm really excited to get a chance to chat with all of you. I know, Aaron, we've communicated a few times here on YouTube.
Yep.
But Bashar, I've never had a chance to speak with you. And Ted, usually you are just yelling at me, telling me I'm wrong on Twitter. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
No, we agree quite a bit. Come on.
No, I know. I'm giving you a hard time. I'm just excited to talk to you. This is a fun group of guys.
I did call in on your show one time, Jack Hammer, last year.
I do remember. Remember you had during one of the. It's been a long time since I've done a call-in show, and that's part of why I'm doing it this way instead of doing a call-in show. Just get a bunch of folks together, and this way we can have a little bit longer of a conversation than we get on a call-in type of show. So
definitely.
Real quick before we get it started, just to shout out a couple folks in the comment section. We have Raphael 5629ers. He's a member of the Toolbox. He says, "What's up, Jack and everyone? Good to have you on board, Raphael." We have also Dabada. He says he's the first, but actually he was second. He was right behind Raphael 5629ers. And then we also have Brian Colt, another member of the 49ers Toolbox. He says, "Raphael 5629ers, what's up, faithful?" Brian Colt is our resident special teams expert. That's what he wants to hear about. He wants to hear about the kickers. He wants to hear about Tabor Pepper. That's what he wants. He wants to hear who's returning kicks, who's kicking them. That's what he's all about, is special teams, especially the kickers. So no, it's going to be a fun show tonight, though. There's a lot of stuff going on around the 49ers, and we should have a good time with this. We're going to start off on quarterbacks, because what else do you do around 49ers? You talk quarterbacks, because that's really this goes back to Joe and Steve, right? Back in the late 80s, 87 time frame. These quarterback controversies, and everybody starting to argue about quarterbacks. We're in a time now where it's a little, I think, even more expanded because of what Twitter brings to the table. So let's get started, though. Let's get into Jimmy Garoppolo, everybody's favorite quarterback around the 49ers. We know that you all really love him. I know that you do. You just don't want to admit it, but you do. What does Jimmy Garoppolo's future hold? And we'll start off with Aaron, then we'll just go around. Ted, you'll go next, and then Bashar, and then I'll wrap it up.
Hopefully his future holds him not being on this team much longer. I know a lot of people want to come up with the argument of, maybe he'll stay, reduce pay, all this and that. But for Trey to reach his full potential, it's got to be Jimmy or bust. Or Trey or bust. There's so many reports going around. There's reports that Seattle's interested, and then they say that's no good. They say that Tampa was interested, and then they say that's not true. He's apparently been throwing for a couple of weeks, so I mean he's getting to the point now where teams want to take a look at him. Honest to God, dude, I really don't know. I really don't. This has been such a long, ongoing headache for a lot of 49er fans. I know I post a lot of videos, and people are like, stop posting them, like, until something happens. I'm like, okay, I understand. I'm sorry. So I really am. I'm at a loss for words with Jimmy. I have no idea. I think in the end, he ends up getting released.
Okay, just going to ask you that. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I think he gets released, over traded. I just don't think any team. I mean, he's not guaranteed. His money's not guaranteed. So he technically, it's not like a team's going to have to, has to pay. But in order for them to make a deal, it seems like the Niners would have to eat a little bit of his contract that the team would be taking on, I guess. So I don't know. There's a lot of, there was a report from, I forget who it was yesterday, where he talked about the Niners not really wanting to take on anything, but it's definitely, they're letting Jimmy kind of canvas the league right now and see who's interested in stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, I think he gets released.
There was a report about that and letting him do some negotiations. What about you, Ted? What do you think is going to happen here with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, I've been saying traded or cut once he's healthy. I think, we've just been waiting to clear that $7.5 million injury clause. A lot of people say, well, you get the money back. And I was saying, well, that's only if somebody signs them for that amount or more. And you don't get it back in 2022, you get it back on the 2023 budget.
Mhm.
And, my paranoid mind says, what if Jimmy G just sat out the season and took the 7.5 mil and, and then we didn't get it back at all. So I think that could be part of the consideration. Um, yeah, I mean, I think for him to be traded, you probably have to have multiple suitors. Otherwise, if it's just one team interested, why wouldn't you just wait it out? Um, so I think that's part of the reason for some of these stories.
Mhm.
I think some of these reporters are trying to help our front office, or we're calling in favors to them to say basically like, we're a suitor, right? Like, oh, we can keep him. We need to keep him, right? Lance has this arm fatigue, and we're just not sure about Trey Lance. There's been all these doubts, and so I think if you only have one suitor, then you have to act like the Niners are a suitor to kind of give them a competition. Otherwise, why wouldn't they just wait for us to cut him and get him for free?
Okay. What do you think, Bashar?
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on, and I appreciate all the people in the chat giving us love. It's always great to be appreciated like that. It's weird, this is like the 49ers out of all teams, they kind of do things so unorthodox, but more so than any other team. It's like maybe other teams in the league would have cut Jimmy by now, or maybe they would have just went for whatever trade that they had, whatever offer they had, and it almost seemed like the 49ers were trying to sit pretty and wait for the best offer where, who knows, maybe they passed up on some deals that could have been done already. Of course, the injury was a huge monkey wrench in the whole ordeal. It's just such a weird, strange situation in terms of trying to trade a player away. Or some Niner fans out there, you guys know who you are. They think that, oh, Jimmy's still on the roster, and this is why we haven't traded him, haven't moved him, because we're not going to move him. We're going to keep him, and he's going to be the quarterback, and Trey Lance has to sit for the next 5 years because Jed York said so. So there's people who think that. And, so, but, it won't surprise me one bit if it's like 2 or 3 days before the start of the NFL season, and then we just cut Jimmy because we tried to trade him and we couldn't, and that was that.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be back with the team. I've said that for a while now, that I think he's going to be gone. I don't think he'll be with them, on the field during training camp at all. A couple of things just to kind of throw out there based on some of the things that you guys have said. So, Bashar, you mentioned other teams, might have cut him already. I think the 49ers are in a little bit different situation, maybe some teams, right? Because they are pretty well set with their roster. They have a pretty they have a pretty top-heavy roster in terms of talent, and most of the guys that they have, they kind of brought back. So they didn't have to add a whole bunch of pieces. If it was a team like Carolina or someone like that, they might have moved on because so they could add more pieces. But I think the 49ers are in a stronger position to be able to wait this out and not have to make many big moves. And then with the contracts that they have, like with Nick Bosa and what's going to come up with Deebo Samuel, most likely. And then even Trey Lance down the road, they don't want to be spending a bunch of money in free agency. I don't think. I think most of their free agency money is going to be spent on keeping their own top players. So I think that's partly why they've kept them and why they've been able to play the game the way they have so far. And then, Ted, you mentioned multiple suitors. And I think that's where you end up with the possibility of a trade, is because that's the only way. If you want to get Jimmy Garoppolo and you know that there's multiple suitors out there, that's the only way that you can guarantee that he ends up on your team, is by making a trade. So if you're worried about that, or if you know that there's another team that's out there but you want to bring him in, then that's how you go and get that deal done. It might not be anything major. It might end up being something like what we saw for Baker Mayfield. But at this point, that would be better than just releasing him if they can get him anything in return. So I think he's going to be traded. Seattle, believe it or not, makes some sense, and I think we'll find out more about it with Cleveland. But that deal seems like it's going to linger until right before training camp starts.
But if we do the Seattle trade, from what I understand, Seattle only has, are there like $16 million under the cap or something like that?
Yes.
So are we going to eat up part of his salary, or?
Well, I don't know. I that's where the team, him talking to teams and negotiating with teams comes into play, because they're not in a position where they have a quarterback that they expect to probably be their guy long term. So you could get Jimmy Garoppolo, extend him, give him a 2-year deal, which gives them, just say you cut the number in half, give them 13 million this year, 13 million next year, and you can fit them under the salary cap that way. Because next year they're expected to use one of their picks next year on a quarterback, one of their top picks on a quarterback that it's unlikely that guy's going to be ready to start year one. And my whole reason for Seattle maybe wanting to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo or pick him up is because I just don't think that they're a team that wants to lose. They have a head coach. Pete Carroll is all about competition. That's what he talks about all the time: competition, compete. And then he's going to go into a season and be like, I don't really, it's okay if we lose. I just don't see that happening.
What do you make of the comments that were made early in the offseason where the Niners or John Lynch kind of contradicted himself? First, he said that keeping Jimmy. There was like multiple scenarios of like Jimmy, if he stayed, if he was gone, and they could do more in free agency. Then he came out and said that the Niners did what they were going to do in free agency, and that the money that they haven't been able to free up, it doesn't affect them. Now we're into this part of the offseason where we're waiting on the Deebo Samuel deal. Excuse me, to get done. What is your take? Do you think what side of the coin do you fall on? Do you think that the money is an issue, or could the Niners theoretically still get the deal done, even with him still occupying a roster spot at the moment?
Get a deal done with Deebo Samuel.
Deebo, yeah.
I believe that from what I've seen, that they could get a deal done with Deebo, give him the signing bonus, in the ballpark of what these other guys have received. And still be able to keep his cap hit within the range, so that they're going to be, because right now he's on the cap for $4 million, right? They have $4 million in cap space available to him. So you basically you're converting most of his money if you do a $20 million signing bonus on a 5-year contract, that's $4 million in signing bonus money that you have to eat this year. So that's basically his contract for this year, right? And then it's only about another $900,000 because the vet minimum for this year for him is $965,000. So you could fit him in right now. The deal, I've seen this go back and forth. The only, you can't do both him and Bosa, but you can get Deebo Samuel done with a $20 million signing bonus in that ballpark if he's okay with it.
It's been what they call it, the $64,000 question for people who were alive in the 70s, that game show. So it's like, what is going to happen? So maybe we'll get to wait just a little bit more, and maybe we'll get an answer soon.
Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
I was going to say, I saw Jason Hurley post that we could sign Deebo and Bosa right now.
Yes, he did post that. You're right. I disagree with him on the Bosa piece. The only reason is because I don't think, maybe the 49ers could do it. I mean, theoretically they could. I don't think Nick Bosa would agree to the type of deal that he's talking about if you just look at what his brother's done.
Okay, makes sense. I had a quick comment about the Seahawks and like the tanking thing, which is basically I've gotten some arguments with Seahawks fans, and they just said, well, basically we're going to tank. And my thing is like, top franchises don't tank. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is that, you may get the QB you want, but you may lose a lot of other guys that don't want to stick around through that process. Mm-hmm. And I've always kind of said, like, winning, it's not a light switch. It's not something you can turn off and necessarily turn back on. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you go to flip it back on and you just keep on losing. And so, for anybody who's thinking, oh, we'll just tank and get the QB we want. Well, in Seattle's case, they might lose DK Metcalf or Lockett or some of their other top pieces while that happens. So then you get the QB you want, and, he doesn't have the weapons he needs, and, or, he turns out to be a bust anyway. Right. So,
mm-hmm. Well, the only one that comes to mind right off the bat of a team that I wouldn't say that they tanked, but they just went ahead and lost that season was Indianapolis. The 1 year before, when Andrew Luck was going to be coming, and I think it was that was the year before he came out. Wasn't that the year that Manning was injured, and so they didn't have a quarterback?
Exactly.
they just rolled with it. But I don't know if there's a consensus number one guy that, like, Andrew Luck was kind of a can't miss prospect. People thought. I don't know if there's one of those guys coming through the pipeline. I know people are saying there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but I don't know if there's one like an Andrew Luck that's just going to be able to come in and step in.
I haven't heard any names of any big time quarterbacks coming out that teams should tank for. And I think just want to go off and talk about Seattle just a little bit. A lot of people have this huge misconception that the only reason why we ever lost to Seattle all those times was because of Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll did have a lot to do with it as well. So just because Russell Wilson's out of the picture, it doesn't mean that, hey, we're guaranteed 2 wins every season, because he's not there.
Yeah, those defenses have always been tough on the 49ers and on Kyle Shanahan too. If you go back and look through the matchups between Carroll and Kyle Shanahan, they haven't been very positive for Shanahan's teams, other than I think the one playoff. A couple of the playoff victory in 2012,
and then Nick Mullins game, right, when Nick Mullins beat him.
Yeah, but even in that game though, the 49ers didn't. They had I think they only scored 19 points in that game, and one of them was a kickoff return for a touchdown from number 13. I can't remember what his name is now. That's how much I remember about him. Richie James returned a kickoff.
Richie James,
wasn't Richie James? But yeah, so. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Seattle wants to go that way, because they could pick up a quarterback. They could use some, even if they don't have a top pick in the draft, they have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks that they can use to move up. So it'll be fun to see kind of what Seattle does. I think it's going to be Seattle or Cleveland are the 2 top teams everybody's talking about. I would keep an eye out there on some kind of on some of these other fringe teams that we don't really hear about. Maybe they're kind of lurking in the weeds in case something happens. We'll see what happens. But Aaron, you had mentioned Deebo Samuel and kind of his contract, and I know that's been a sore subject for him throughout the year. And last week, Mike Silver and Colin Cowherd during their discussion of the 49ers brought up Deebo Samuel and said that we don't know exactly why Deebo Samuel's angry. He hasn't given anybody that answer yet, but it could be that he's angry or frustrated with the change of quarterback. So Bashar, I'll start with you. Why do you think Deebo Samuel isn't happy, or do you think he isn't happy due to the quarterback change in particular? That one.
Yeah, I don't think it's the quarterback issue. I'd be surprised. I mean, wasn't there a press conference where Trey Lance pretty much said that he talks to Deebo a lot on the phone or something like that, and they speak to each other a whole bunch? Now, obviously, we do see those. We do see Ayuk and Trey having more of a connection. Obviously, off the field, that's more evident. But it honestly surprised me if Deebo's angry at Trey Lance, and I don't see anything that would give us a reason to think so. I mean, and even when they played together for a short time on the field, I mean, when Deebo got those big plays from Trey, those big passes, he looked pretty happy and pretty excited. Who wouldn't be? But I just don't know what any reason could be. I mean, other than the fact that he doesn't play with Jimmy anymore, I don't know.
Oh, okay. What do you think, Ted? Do you think that that Deebo's upset because of the change of quarterback?
I mean, I don't think so. Deebo had half of his receiving touchdowns for 2021 in just 2.5 games with Lance. So he had 6 for the season, 3 with Lance. But I will say Jimmy did really force feed him the ball. I mean, God, think of like that Colts game where it's just like even the announcers were like, "Oh, they're going to throw to Deebo," and then he threw to Deebo, and like there are 3 guys all around, and Deebo bobbled it, and that was an interception. So I mean, I guess I can see that a little bit. And I know there's clearly a lot of guys in the locker room that like Jimmy and didn't like Lance coming in and getting that TD against the Lions. And so obviously Kittle's going to be one of those guys, probably McGlinchey, maybe Juice. I don't know. And then I don't know if Deebo's one of those guys too. Hard to say. I mean, to me, when the whole thing came out, I got into a lot of arguments with people about the whole thing. And, I said all along, I thought it was just a negotiation tactic. I thought it was his agent just trying to get somebody to get on the board so that his other guy, because Tory Dandy, Deebo's agent, represents Deebo, DK, AJ Brown, Hollywood, and Terry McLaurin, all 5. Not to mention the Denzel Ward for the Browns as well too, who got a monster deal, highest paid corner ever. And I don't even know if he's probably top 10, but I mean I don't think he's anywhere near number 1. Anyway, bottom line is I think Tory Dandy was trying to push up the timetable. I think everybody knows that we don't sign these deals until right about now, or even a couple weeks from now at the beginning, towards the beginning of camp, or even a week or two into camp. So I think he was trying to get somebody on the board as a benchmark for all these other guys he represents. And clearly, Tory Dandy moved two of those guys. He moved Hollywood Brown from the Ravens to the Cards, and obviously AJ Brown from the Titans to the Eagles. So I think it's mostly money and usage. I think there could be this thing of like, well, you played wide back, so we're going to pay you as a mix between a running back and a wide receiver. And Deebo's like, hell no. I was on pace for over 1,800 yards before we made the switch. So pay me like a wide receiver, and a darn well a top wide receiver. I mean, when it all started out, I was thinking around 25 mil would be the number for Deebo. And since then, I'm thinking we might do a little less because, AJ had to leave the Titans to get 25 mil. And if Deebo values being on a winner, and I think clearly we are a winning roster right now, QB away. And if Lance is that guy, I could see us, making a lot of noise in the playoffs this year. So if Deebo values that, I could see him taking slightly less than 25, like 23, 24 mil maybe. But yeah, I think mostly it's money and his agent. If you ask me, I think once we get the deal in place, everything's going to be hunky dory. I don't think we'll ever hear about it again.
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with Ted. Money. I was on Eric Davis's Instagram Live while I was at work, and he talked about how money has a way of fixing a lot of things that could be so-called problems. As far as if Deebo has an issue with Trey, I mean, where do these guys get this from? There's a reason why I'm blocked by Mike Silver. I call him a hack. And this is just more proof that these guys put out stuff. People say you put out stuff to get clicks, put out stuff to get attention, especially during the dry part of the offseason, and this just sounds more of the same. There's just a whole lot of nothing. It's a nothing burger right now. That's all these guys are talking. It's just big nothing. And once camp starts, and if Trey, say Trey looks good, the narrative could switch. And then the narrative's going to be like, okay, now let's see him do it in the regular season. And then he's going to get to the regular season. And then they're going to say, well, okay, let's see if he can do it. It's never going to end. So to me, no, I don't think Deebo has an issue with him whatsoever. And like I said, money has a way of solving a lot of problems. If somebody says, hey, we're going to give you $25 million a year, and you're not so sold on the quarterback, I think he'll be okay. So no, I don't think Trey is a problem at all for Deebo.
And I remember at one point people were trying to say that Deebo wasn't talking to Lynch, and Deebo was mad at Kyle and mad at both of them, and there's no way anything could get done. And at the end of the day, we saw Deebo show up to camp. Now he didn't compete in full, he didn't participate in the full drills, but he was present. He was there. He was playing catch with Kyle Shanahan's son. So at the end of the day, I just think it's the money. When I see those signs, it just tells me that it's the money.
I think there is some money to it. I think when you look at, one of you was mentioned in thinking, I think it was Ted, you were saying that you felt like the 49ers could give him $25 million. I think they could still do that, give him a new 4-year deal with $100 million, 4-year, $100 million deal type of thing. Because even in that, when you take into account the year that the year he still has on his contract, that runs out to 5 years, $104 million, which is, closer to the $20 million range per year on an average. I know that's not the way that it's looked at, but from the reporting standpoint of it, but from the actual dollars and cents, I think that can make sense. That's the way that it would work. And I think some of it could be the quarterback. Not that he doesn't like Trey Lance. I don't think I think that when we look at it and to say that he's frustrated because he's going to have to play with Trey Lance, I think that's where. I don't think it's that he doesn't like Trey. I think he likes Trey. We heard him when he was wired up. I think it was before the Raiders game during the preseason. He was standing there next to Trey saying that, everybody's going to learn about you today. You're going to show them how good you are and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's about that. I think it could be there is some concern, or maybe we see a dip in his numbers because with Trey Lance, you're going to see other guys be able to, I think, step up. I think you're going to see Brandon Ayuk have a little bit better year because the deep ball is going to take some of those targets away, possibly take some targets away from Deebo. I think even George Kittle might see the ball come his way finally because his numbers have really been down. the last 3 years in terms of his targets. When you look at Kittle's best year, he got targeted 79 times over the last 8 games of the season when Nick Mullins took over at quarterback that year. And that was a big part of it. That's when he put up all of a big portion of his yardage, not all of it, but he put up about 200. He had about 200 yards receiving more in the second half than he did in the first half of that year. And that's what happens. The more times you get thrown the ball, the more. And that's one of the things. The 49ers don't throw it enough to really get those guys big numbers and still spread it around. So that could be the only thing that that maybe if he's frustrated about the quarterback piece. But beyond that, everything else you guys said, I agree with. I think this whole thing's always been about money over everything else. It's been about wanting to get paid. I agree with, I think it was Bashar when you were talking about Tory Dandy. It was either Bashar or Ted talking about Tory Dandy wanting to get his clients paid. I had mentioned that at one point on Twitter, thinking that, it was partly him being a good teammate to his agent group. So overall, I don't think he's unhappy with the quarterback change. I think he might be a little bit unhappy with the potential of his numbers going down, but I don't think it's even, the one thing that was said in that piece was the quarterback not being able to get the ball to him in tight spaces. I disagree with that. I just think it's going to be a matter of the ball being spread around to other people more often, or deeper balls to the other guys that take our opportunities away from him.
I think the offense is definitely going to be similar in some ways. I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to reinvent the wheel. I mean, he runs what he runs, and he makes defenses adapt. It's not necessarily him trying to change anything, but at the same time, you're right. I could understand why there could be a little bit of apprehension or uncertainty with him, because he's a different quarterback. He's going to take chances. He's going to scramble, and guys are going to get open on unscripted plays, kind of like what you see with all these mobile quarterbacks that have been in the NFC West, where they buy time with their legs and other guys get open. And it's not always going to be just slants and digs and crossers. Some guys are going to get stuff downfield. And I don't know if Deebo's exactly that kind of receiver. I think Deebo's more of like with slants and things like that. Deebo is incredible, but Ayuk to me screams downfield threat just with his ability. I don't know. He's a different type of receiver. He's got humongous reach. He's got, for a guy who's only 5'11", he's got arms that are like from someone who's like 6'3" or 6'4". So huge wingspan. So yeah, I could see that. But I think money is the ultimate medicine for someone who has uncertainty in their future. Unless the Niners were just straight out trash and they were a bad team, I could understand that money probably wouldn't do it for them. But the Niners got a pretty damn good roster right now with everybody healthy. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just kind of in thinking through everything. The one thing I will say is I think Deebo can run everything in the route tree. We saw him make a couple of plays deep last year. 3 of them really. He made the catch against. He had that really nice catch against Detroit that reminds me a lot of Jerry Rice's touchdown against Chicago in the NFC Championship game back in '88 for the older folks. He had the big catch down the sidelines against the Rams in Week 18. That was probably the best ball we saw Jimmy Garoppolo throw all year.
The Bears one too was nice.
Yeah, the Bears.
Yeah, I was going to hit that one. Yeah, and the Bears one was really, of all those, the one against the Bears was interesting because it's a deep post. The DB's right on him, and you can see him really do a good job of getting the DB and using his body to shield the DB away from it as he goes up. And that was a really good wide receiver play to be able to use his body, shield him, go up, get the ball at the highest point, and come down with it. That was a big play by Deebo for sure. So I think he just needs the opportunity, and I think that's the same thing with Brandon Ayuk and all these guys. You get a quarterback that can hit you at all levels, and all of a sudden your game changes. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing if that comes to fruition. That's kind of one of the things to keep for me that I want to keep an eye on is, do we see the ball go down the field more? Because I know, Aaron, you've heard me say this, I think, and Bashar and Ted, if you follow me on Twitter and stuff, you probably see me mention this, but I don't think that the Flyers offense needs to really change a whole lot from a passing game perspective. I run everything that you've been running and let the quarterback take advantage of those second level throws that the quarterback you had before wasn't taking or missing. We can go back to the NFC Championship game and you can pinpoint 4 or 5 plays in that game where there's Brandon Ayuk wide open or a receiver open at the second level and the ball doesn't go to him, or just completely gets missed when the ball does go there. So I think it's going to be, if we see the changes in the 49ers offense, is going to come more in the running game side than in the passing game.
Well, I had some thoughts on that. I mean, I really don't think anyone is going to suffer under Lance. I think Deebo will be about the same or maybe a modest bump up.
Okay.
Like you said, I think Ayuk is going to have an explosion. But finally having not only a QB who can throw deep and outside the numbers where he runs most of his routes, but also just one who's gonna attempt to hit him. I mean, he was running free so many games, and Jimmy just wouldn't throw him the ball. Regarding the offense, I mean, I think there will be some changes. I think it'll be somewhat more like what Atlanta, the Falcons' offense looked like with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. And here's something that I've been thinking about, and I want to see what you guys think about this. All right, so the 2021 offense I've been saying was really geared around Jimmy G, right? It was a shotgun type offense, a lot more than play action that Shanahan loves to run. But just something that I was thinking about was Jimmy G really likes to throw short and intermediate down the middle. And we ran a lot of outside zone. So we're kind of running where we're not throwing to, or throwing where we're not running to. Now Lance likes to throw outside and the numbers and deep. I could really see us running a lot more up the gut, and I think some of our personnel reflects that with Aaron Banks, with Trey Sermon, with Ty Davis Price. I think the fact that we didn't really replace Mostert in the draft or free agency, I really thought we would do that, and instead we just got a bunch of guys that are like Trey Sermon clones, right? I mean, Ty Davis Price is just a 10 pounds heavier version. From everything I've heard about Jordan Mason, he's very similar, and so I think we're going to run it a lot more up the gut. But let me know what you think of that.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that one. And they were even saying it, at one point in time, like after the draft, like Anthony, they were saying like, oh, with the advent of Anthony Lynn, and I think Anthony Lynn might have said it himself too, that they were looking more towards a power running attack. So you pretty much nailed it on the head. And we get a bigger type guard like Banks in the mix, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I love the running game in general. I'm an old school guy, and Lance is excellent with play action and from under center, so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree with. Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No, Ted has me thinking, because now that he's brought that up, I'm starting to see some of the moves they made as far as like drafting running backs that are drafting a running back is pretty much the same of what you already have, letting Mostert go, and just the fact that they drafted a guy last year in Aaron Banks who's more of a mauler. A lot of people thought of him as like a Larry Allen type player. At least that's what I think. Larry Kruger might have said that. And now Ted's kind of open minded. You're right. There definitely could be I wouldn't say wholesale changes, but more of an emphasis on running up the middle than doing a lot of this misdirection, 2 yards in a cloud of dust type offense. Maybe the Niners are just change it up completely and have defenses trying to figure them out for the first half of the season. It's interesting now that I think about it, the way that they've, kind of almost got a clone of the running back that they already have, and they got this gigantic guard that's going to be in the interior. Interesting. It's definitely something to look in to watch for, especially early on in the season, especially with Lance kind of getting his feelers when he first gets back, his first real snaps as the starter of the 49ers.
Yeah, no, that was a really good one, Ted, because that's actually something that Grant and I talked about all the way back in 2021 on the night, because we were doing the draft stuff together on his channel, and that was one of the things we talked about. I don't know if it was after Aaron Banks or if it was, I think, because Banks and Sermon were both day 2 picks, right? So it would have been after day 2 of that draft, and we talked about the more of a power running team. It didn't materialize as much last year because Sermon didn't play, but yeah, that's a really good point, because you've got all three. You got 3 backs that are all the same. I think in Mitchell and Sermon and the new guy Tyrion Davis Price. I think you're right on the money with what you're saying there. This is going to be between the tackles. They're going to do some outside zone, but that's going to really set it up, and that ability to throw off a play action that jumps out when you watch Trey Lance at North Dakota State. number of things. There were times when I was going through it. The second time I watched this film, that I started getting excited. Probably like what Kyle Shanahan was thinking as he was watching it, because you could see him running Kyle Shanahan's plays. The boot and the throwback and all that kind of stuff. Were you going to say something else, Ted? Before I jumped in.
No, I was just going to say, Mitchell is kind of similar. He has that fast 40 time, but he really doesn't play to that. But I do think he is more still the outside zone type of guy. And then I think TDP and Sermon will be more of the up the gut, and maybe Jordan Mason if he makes the team. That's the big question: is will he make the team, or will it be Jeff Wilson? I think you're less likely to have Jordan Mason poached off the practice squad than Jeff Wilson, probably.
Jeff Wilson is a banger too. He's definitely someone who likes physicality and running inside. So
he was in 2020, that's for sure.
Yeah. He was
run from that dark place, I think he said, or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing with Jeff, real quick with Jeff Wilson, that's cool too, is that he has that ability to play the halfback and the fullback spot. So you can put him out there, and it looks like you're in 21 personnel or whatever, 11 personnel, and you can still get into a two-back set. If Deebo Samuel's on the field, we saw him do that so much last year. So that's a good one.
That's right. It was Wilson and Juwan Jennings against the Rams, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
I wanted to add something about Elijah Mitchell, because the guys in the chat right now, Taryn Lewis, TL from 49er Faithful League podcast, shout out to him and Mariah, because they were actually at the draft party, and one of the draft parties that was hosted in Vegas, and they ran into Elijah Mitchell, and TL was pretty much telling Elijah Mitchell, like, hey, you look a lot bigger than you were last year, and he was pretty much basically saying that he's been told that, to build his body up for more of a physical style season. So we'll see what's up with that.
Yeah, that was good because he mentioned that Elijah Mitchell mentioned that when he met with the press with us. I don't remember if it was before the draft or if it was at the beginning of OTAs when it was, but they asked him about it, and he talked about being asked to put more weight on. Because he needs it, because he needs to be able to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing, because every time he got a heavy workload last year, he missed games after it. So he, in some ways, it wasn't so much of the arm fatigue, but it was the leg fatigue that got to him last year, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Every week you'd see all the injury reports.
Yeah.
Somebody called him the Revenant. I thought that was pretty funny, but sad also at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good back. Just we got to see if he can stay healthy for throughout the season. Kind of to switch gears off of where we are right there. Let's get into this is a question that I got into quite a bit yesterday with my normal Thursday night Hammer and Nails co-host Jesse Naylor on Twitter about. But what do you guys think? Do you think that Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel are the reason why the 49ers suddenly started winning? You look at the record with and without them, it's pretty stark. But do you think that it's Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, or do you think it's a combination of some other things as well? Ted, why don't you start us off? You haven't started us yet.
Okay. So, here's how I put it. Jimmy G, he helped us win when we were bad. And then when we got good, he kind of held us back. And that's just, a way to be respectful, because he did help us. He gave us credibility when we had none. Now, along with that, maybe one of the first guys to come after Jimmy G, we all know, is Richard Sherman. He didn't play well in 2018 because he was still rehabbing from his Achilles surgeries. But that was a big piece. Obviously, Bosa was a huge piece. Deebo was a huge piece. Bosa sooner, took Deebo a little while. I think he didn't break out till week 10 of 2019, if I recall correctly. It was, I think, the Seahawks game when I think Sanders got injured and we really had to rely on Deebo, and he had like a 100-yard game. I was there. It was a hell of a game, even though we lost. So yeah, I mean, some other things. 2019 was Jimmy Ward's first year playing free safety. I'm pretty sure it was Adrian Colbert in 2018. So that was a big plus for us. So we had Sherman and Ward in good positions in the secondary. Bosa. Ford was a huge addition for 2018. Those first 8 games he played, he was a monster. Ford would come in fast, get the QB to step up, then Bosa would be the next in, make him step up again, and then it was Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner cleaning it up. And like I think when Ford was out, I think there was a stat like Bosa only had literally 1 sack in those games when Ford was out in the second half of the season. And then of course he came back for the playoffs and helped us contribute. Ford was a big one. I think Quan Alexander played pretty well in the first half before he got injured. Not as well as what we paid him, but I think the sort of the hype around him and what a great teammate he was really important. So yeah, there was a lot of factors in my mind that helped. It wasn't just Bosa and Deebo, but they were the 2 biggest draft picks. And boy, I mean, the best draft of any team I can remember. I mean, ever maybe. I mean, who gets a receiver like that and a DE like that in the same draft? I mean, I know one was number 2 overall and one was early in the second round, almost a first round pick for Deebo. But what an amazing draft.
It's a really good draft, but come on, you can't say it's the best. You can't. That's not better than the 86 draft for the 49ers, though.
Okay, well,
right.
In recent memory,
no, definitely in recent memory.
I didn't pay attention to the draft that much back then. I was just, a fanboy as a teenager. So
I know exactly. Yeah, I get you. What do you think? Aaron?
They're definitely needle movers as far as like they're the players that put you over the top. But to say that 2 players are the only reason, you're discrediting, however many what is it, 52 players that suit up, or 52 starters? What's the number of starters that we have going into game day?
Yeah, there's 40. I think it's 46 at dress, but and it's kind of inherent the answers. I don't think that when I was going back and forth with Jesse on that, I think that he's of the mind that those guys were the difference makers that pushed him over the top. Just to be fair with the way that we're answering it.
Sports Talk brought up Emmanuel Sanders. I don't think obviously getting him at the trade deadline was huge, especially for our young receivers like Deebo and KB. Really benefited from him too.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Aaron, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. It's funny because teams that go on Super Bowl runs that have special teams, there is, your best players make you that much better. There's a reason why they get paid the money that they do. But like Emmanuel Sanders, how important was he, especially that game against the New Orleans Saints? Amazing. It's tough because you say that they're not the whole team, but at the same time take those guys off the field and you're not going to be as good by a long shot. Deebo is a special player because Deebo is he's not just a physical specimen but it's just the heart that he plays with, the way he runs, the way he uses his body as a battering ram, and he's just a different type of player that I've ever seen, and I've been a Niners fan since 1989. Mm-hmm. And then Bosa's like cut out of. He's sculpted out of clay, man. I mean, look at his body. Just look at the way he plays. He's what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. The
Adonis.
No, when someone is so, they used to call I can't think of it.
Relentless motor.
No.
Game changer, dominant.
All I know is he's really, really good, and I can't think of the word. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Type it in the chat when you remember it.
I just think you can't discredit all the other players on the team, but at the same time, without those 2 guys on the team, you don't make the playoff run that you do. There's reasons why guys are the guys that they are, and that they get the money that they get is because they're the best of their position or top 5, 10 in their position, and there's a reason why the Niners are going to be paying these guys a lot of money very, very soon. So it's a weird question because you don't win without them, but at the same time, to say that they're the only reason is discrediting the rest of your team. So it's just I don't know. I have so much more I want to say, but my brain is fried right now, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, you can always come back at us. Go ahead, Bashar. What do you got?
Oh, yeah. When you remember that word, get back with us, Aaron. As far as what Ted said, Ted pretty much said it all, in my opinion. I mean, the roster improved drastically, in my opinion. Now, obviously, it's great to have those game-changing players, Bosa and Deebo. And in 2018, and we picked up Fred Warner. And then he mentioned Quan Alexander, that we had him for the 2019 season. We picked up D Ford, and 2019 we picked up Dre Greenlaw in the draft, and we also drafted. I got 99 problems, but a Mitch ain't one. So don't forget about that. But yeah, I mean, Bosa and Deebo are amazing, electrifying players. But if somebody put a gun to my head and said you can only keep one, I'm keeping Bosa because, we have more we're more stacked at receiver now, more so than we've been in the past. And a pass rusher like Bosa is so hard to come by.
They don't grow on trees. Elite pass rushers are difficult to get. And when you get them, you keep them and you pay for them. The word I was looking for is phenom. That's what Bosa is. He's a phenom.
Yeah.
He's just the guy was born with the technique, like his father and his brother and himself. Like he came into the league so far ahead of other guys as far as pass rush moves and technique and everything. He's just amazing. Yeah. Like I can't. His only bugaboo is his inability to stay healthy. The Bosas are known, even the dad, that they're a little bit on their fragility side as far as. But if you watch Bosa play, you can understand why he gets hurt. He throws his body around like a crazy man, just the way he plays. So, but yeah, he's a phenom. So at the same time, you have the Niners are a really good roster right now. They're really deep. At least that's what we think. And they have been quite some time. They're not like the Rams. They're not top heavy. The Niners have good players and good depth. But I just think that those great players they're like the tipping point from you being really good into being, a deep playoff team and challenging for a championship.
Yeah, you said fragile. That means that's French, right?
Might be
French.
Like a Christmas Story where they got that package and they said, it's fragile, it's Italian.
Oh, Italian. I screwed up the joke, but yeah.
That's okay.
No, I think Bosa and Deebo are extremely important players. The 49ers don't go very far without them. For me, the quarterback is the guy. The biggest difference for the 49ers from 17, 18, 19, for winning games, this is for winning games. For winning games under Kyle Shanahan, it's been the quarterback. And I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo, like just trying to make point this on Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's the only guy when you say look at the 49ers over the last 5 years. I guess the easiest way to say it is when the 49ers have the quarterback position right. Now, that's not even really saying that Garoppolo is the reason, but at least they have somebody that can go out there and win games, like can manage a game as a starting caliber quarterback. He's the only starting caliber quarterback they've had throughout this period, other than the 2 games with Trey Lance this year. They were 6-3 without Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel in games started by Jimmy Garoppolo. That shows you that with a quarterback that can just get some things done, that Kyle Shanahan can figure it out. He just needs to have a quarterback. And look at the numbers that Nick Mullins put up. If Nick Mullins wasn't a turnover machine, he's probably still with the 49ers, right? But that's why the 49ers didn't make the playoffs in 2020 was because Nick Mullins, the pick 6 return for a touchdown against and missing wide open receivers against Philadelphia, the pick 6 return for a touchdown against Washington, and the fumble return for a touchdown against Washington. You can go through the games, that the Dallas game, getting, fumbling the ball on a sack deep in his own end early on, 2 other picks, just all kinds of things. I think for me, that's the biggest indicator of if the 49ers are going to win or lose is who is playing quarterback, and do they have somebody that's capable of being an NFL caliber starting quarterback. And so, like I said, I felt in 2020, looking back, if they had a quarterback, they'd probably make the playoffs that year, even though I was talking way too much positivity around Nick Mullins that year. Looking back on it, I was wrong on that. But just with a starting caliber quarterback, this team can go far. And I think, and that's kind of puts a little bit of pressure on Trey Lance. I've said this a few times in the postseason. Or in the offseason, they're going to go as far as Trey Lance takes them, because this team has shown that they can win as long as they have a good quarterback, even when the offensive line isn't 100%. They did in 2019. They did it last year.
Elite level quarterbacks, they cover up a lot of warts on teams that, there's teams that don't nearly have the player like Bosa or the defense that we had in 2019, but their quarterback, I don't like Aaron Rodgers as a person, but man, talk about someone who can elevate Mahomes, elevate Russell Wilson when he was doing really well. There's just these players, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, they just take over games. They throw for 5 touchdowns and 500 yards, and it's a shootout, and they're able to stay right with him. Look at Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. That playoff game last year was some of the best offensive football I've ever seen in my 42 years of life. And it's because of the quarterbacks. They have two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So yeah, you can have all these great players on defense, and Deebo and all this, but you have a quarterback that can take his game into another stratosphere and cover up. Say someone gets hurt on defense somewhere out, without a Deebo or without a Bosa, but you have a quarterback that can consistently go throw for throw with anybody in the league. It can cover up a lot of issues that not having that quarterback does not.
Yeah, and that's where Trey Lance comes in, right? That's the expectation of him. So we'll see how it works out. I'm looking forward to seeing Trey Lance come in. I think they're going to be fine with him. I've been saying that as well. I'm definitely skew more towards the positive on Trey Lance than the negative. And at the same time, that's my viewpoint. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's going to be good. He looked good in OTAs and minicamp. I know that. So we'll see if he can carry that through into training camp, into the next season. Just kind of looking at where we are. Let's just take a look at the offensive line. We'll do all offense on this show. How do you guys feel the offensive line is going to shake out? What do you think that's going to look like? I kind of gave my thoughts on it a minute ago in terms of the ability of the team to win without it being super strong. But what do you think, Bashir? We'll start with you. How do you think this offensive line is going to round out?
Yeah, it's a huge question mark. As much as I love offensive line and I want our offensive line to succeed, I'm not going to be a homer and say, oh, yeah, it's not a problem. We're going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. And we can't say that because there's just so much uncertainty. Does McGlinchey come back and become, as good as he was in the past, or if not better, or possibly worse? Who knows? Who knows about McGlinchey? Who's going to be our center? Is it going to be Brindle? Is it going to be Donovan West? Is it going to be Brunskill? Aaron Banks? It sounds like Aaron Banks and Trent Williams, obviously the mainstay. Maybe everybody's penciled in Aaron Banks as as the guy right next to him. I guess that's almost a sure thing you could say. And it sounds like, I'm not sure if you're at the practices or not, but I saw the picture of Aaron Banks. He looks like he got in a whole lot better shape and he's more focused and possibly ready to be the starter. So, but it's we're going to have a more mobile quarterback too, which is nice. But again, I did hear that something that sometimes the mobile type quarterbacks do get sacked a lot too. So I don't know, man. The good thing was that now we didn't draft any veteran guys. I wanted to pick up some veteran guys, but at the same time we drafted a good Spencer Burford, Nick Zakelj, and we signed Donovan West, who I wanted us to draft out of Arizona State at center. I'm pretty big on the guy. And we picked up Poe. So, as they say, iron sharpens iron. I hope that's the case because we got in a lot of horses to compete. Now they're all rookies and second-year players and a couple of vets. But, back to the iron sharpens iron thing, I hope that's the case. But as Niner Sickness said yesterday when he was on the show, he said he said something about, you don't want it to be plastic on plastic, because plastic can sharpen plastic. So hopefully these guys can compete. And again, this is one positive for the offensive line. They're going up against one of the better defensive line crews in the league day in and day out in practice. So that's a huge plus for their development.
Yeah. What do you think, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, Bashar pretty much hit it all on the head. I think Aaron Banks, I'm pretty confident in. Brendel, a little bit less. McGlinchey, I'm glad to hear that he's at a good weight. But until he straps him on and really gets full contact, I'm going to have my questions about him and that quad, tendon tear. It's a hell of an injury.
Mhm.
It kind of O-line reminds me a little bit of a guy from 2019 who I think was pretty key to our early success that season, which was Richburg, the center. Really was great until he tore his patellar tendon, which is very similar to what McGlinchey did. It's just opposite sides of the kneecap, right? The patellar tendon goes down and the quad tendon goes up to the quad. But both have terrible prognoses. And, I think Richburg being out for the Super Bowl is one of the big reasons we lost. Also, two other guys that we lost along the way, Blair and DJ Jones, both kind of went out slightly after mid-season. I think if we had those three guys on the interior offensive and interior defensive line, I think we win the Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm a little concerned about O-line. I think Lance can help. Like we said, can help cover up some warts, his mobility. The main thing is that it's got to be decent. You can't have defensive linemen meeting your quarterback right when he plants that back foot. He's got to have a split second to identify the rush and then react and get out of the way. If they're there right when he stops, he's going to get clobbered. So I hope that's not the case. And clearly, over center is the most direct path to the quarterback. So I know, but I've heard that Brendel's a good pass blocker. When I heard all about him, I heard that he was very athletic. So my mind automatically went to a good run blocker, but somebody said he's a good pass blocker. So I hope that's the case because I really feel like that's where Mac excelled, was in pass blocking. He was kind of too old to be a really dominant run blocker anymore and really move those DTs in there. So if Brendel can be at least a good pass blocker, then I'm going to feel a lot better about everything.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah. Offensive line to me is super worrisome because you have a young quarterback, and if he's getting beat up every play, you're never going to get the true sense of what he really could be. Yeah, he's mobile and he can move around, but if you get a guy beat up, eventually he's going to get hurt. I don't care how big or strong he is. Trent Williams to me is the only solid piece on this offensive line. Everything else is in flux, from left guard all the way to right tackle. It's scary. There's a huge what if game. I mean, center is a huge position for a young quarterback because the center helps the quarterback. He helps them at the offensive line. He's able to call out things, protections, all that kind of stuff. And it's definitely worrisome for me for Trey more than anything. If it was a little bit, I hate to say this, but someone like Jimmy who's been in the league a lot longer, he's just a little bit more experienced at dealing with guys being out and maybe someone not being his number one center just because he's done it for so long. But Trey's so young, so inexperienced. You want to have as many things for sure for this kid to succeed as possible. And this offensive line to me is a humongous question mark. Center, left guard, who's playing right guard this year? Is it going to be Brunskill? I'm not a Brunskill fan. I could do without him. McGlinchey, I mean, a quad for a guy that big, quads are so important in the explosion that you get off of your legs into a pass block. Like, it's all in the legs, right? For offensive linemen. I mean, upper body strength is one thing, but they got to be able to anchor. Mm-hmm. Can that thing withstand going up against the air, not Aaron Donalds, but just high level guys who can really give him a run for his money? I mean, he's already had pass blocking issues before, and now coming off of a quad, how is that going to be affected? Is he going to be even worse in pass blocking? So I'm definitely concerned all the way around. But all that can go away if they figure something out in camp and they figure out a good rotation of who's going to be in there, and then I'll feel a little bit better about it. But right now I'm pretty worried, to be honest with you.
I think the biggest question, really, I know center is a big one, but I think that the health of Michael McGlinchey might even be the biggest one, because if he's not healthy, that affects what they're doing at right guard. Because right now the right guards are both tackles, also, right? Jalen Moore and Spencer Burford. They have Justin School back. Justin School, has shown to be able to handle starting duty. He did that in 2019, but you don't want to go into the season with that. And then at center, you have the question mark with Brendel. I know during OTAs and minicamp, we didn't see any competition there between Brendel and Brunskill, but I'd be a little surprised if we didn't see some competition between those two during training camp. I think Brunskill is better at right guard, but I think that he's the only one that's going to push Brendel for a starting position at center. And I also think that Jalen Moore is a better right guard than a right tackle, just based on what I've seen of him. The little bit that we saw of him during training camp, he was really struggling, or not in training camp, but during OTAs and minicamp, he was really struggling with the pass rush from when he was on the outside. Inside, he was much better. So, overall, I think the offensive, the woes of the offensive line, I think they're going to be better than that group was in 2020. They might even be okay, relatively comparable to what they were last year, as long as they get the center position figured out and McGlinchey's healthy. I feel like they're going to be better at left guard. I think Aaron Banks is going to be a better pass protector than Laken Tomlinson was. He might not be quite as good on the run block, but I think he's going to be a better pass blocker. That's what we saw of him when he was at Notre Dame, at least. And we'll see where they go from there. But I think I think the offensive line is going to be, we know it's going to be Williams and Banks. Those are the two that we know. The other three, I think, are a little bit of a toss-up right now, depending on what the health of McGlinchey, and then if Brendel's able to hold up, or if Brunskill gets a shot there and beats him out.
What do you guys think about J.C. Treader after we cut or trade Jimmy?
Treader, he showed the ability to do it. The thing with him is I would think that you'd want him here working with Trey Lance throughout, and he's a guy who didn't practice last year, and so I think that's the risk. Only a big risk throwing him in there with Trey Lance, and Lance not having worked with him in practice all the time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I was hearing that Treader has some type of injury concerns. I don't know if it's the knee or the ankle or
same thing we've been talking about, patellar tendon, like what Richburg had.
Yeah, that's why he wasn't practicing last year.
Hey, the one thing about Aaron Banks, if he can avoid those two holding calls that Tomlinson seemed to get every game, that would be key. Because I swear to God, every time I watched a 49ers game, Tomlinson would get at least one, if not two, holding calls a game. I don't know what the guy's deal was, but like, if Aaron Banks can avoid that, man, he's going to make me very happy. Because that's just, I mean, every game, like, I swear to God, you look on it's number 75 with holding. I'm like, how? Every game? Seriously, dude? So if he can avoid that, it'd be great.
And, I know with Jimmy's ACL, it was really McGlinchey that kind of whiffed his block first. And I think he whiffed two blocks that caused Jimmy to have to flee the pocket there. But I'm pretty sure that literally every single one of Jimmy's other injuries, the ankle, the shoulder, and the thumb, were all whiffed blocks by Laken Tomlinson. So I know the ankle was, because that was when Quinnen Williams beat him at Met Death Field, which is what I call that turf after it claimed half our team that day. But I'm pretty sure the Cowboys injury, where he injured his shoulder and the thumb against the Titans, were all Laken whiffs.
Yeah, two of those three. The Jets one definitely was on Tomlinson getting beat. The one against the Cowboys, the shoulder, was Laken Tomlinson getting beat. The thumb in Tennessee, if it's the play that everybody was talking about it being, it was actually George Kittle getting beat around the edge on that one.
No.
So
nice pronouncing Spencer Burford, by the way.
a lot of people say Buford, from what I hear.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So real quick, do you guys have time for one more?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. And after that, I got to bounce, but we're good.
No, we're good. Okay, we'll do one more, just because we have a good group in here, and we've been focusing all on offense. Let's take a little bit of a look at the defensive side. For there's one big free agent acquisition that they made this year was on the defensive side, and it was bringing in Charvarius Ward. Ted, why don't you start us off? What do you think the impact is that Ward's going to have on the defense?
Big. I think he's a really good man cover safety corner. I've talked to some Chiefs fans, and they say, expect big things. They say he can be a little handsy, like he'll get some holding calls and some PIs, but a lot of people like L'Jarius Sneed, their other corner, but Ward was going against the wide receiver ones, which is a much tougher assignment. So even though Sneed maybe had better looking stats, that's sort of the context behind it. And whatever he did with the Chiefs, like, he's going to do way more with our front seven. I mean, we're just talking about, we think we're going to have one of the best defensive lines, especially from a pass rushing perspective. Plus, obviously, the best inside linebacking trio in all of football, with Warner, Aziz, and Dre. I mean, there is no trio of linebackers that tops those three. And then, I would argue that he's our only free agent pickup. I think Kamoko Toure is going to be a really big one for us too, as a really speedy, bendy defensive end, especially until, if it takes Drake Jackson a little while to get up to speed, who I also expect a lot from. Kamoko Toure might be our bridge defensive end, our bridge D Ford, until Drake Jackson, I think, will be our long-term D Ford replacement.
Well, I just totally froze. Javarius Ward, to me, he puts everybody on the depth chart where they need to be. Him being the number one corner, I feel, you slot him at the top, everybody else kind of falls into where exactly they should be. We haven't had a really good elite level, or at least high level man corner in a long time. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Niners do play more man than zone, because the Niners have been strictly cover three for the most part since the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch regime took over. And then, if everybody can stay healthy, who's the corner of opposite from him? I know a lot of people are saying if Verrett's healthy, you play Verrett and you could have an elite, 1-2 combination on the corner. I don't know that for certain. I would say Emmanuel Mosley, just because, he had some issues last year with injuries, but I don't know, man. Like that'll be interesting to see, like who plays across from him, because yeah, you're right, Ted, with that pass rush and an ability to be a little bit more sticky on receivers and not have guys wide open in zones like the Niners. The Niners defense, to me, when you play cover three, you got to get home, because if you don't, dudes are just like, it's like pitch and catch, especially with a team like the Rams. So this secondary has a chance to be sneaky good, because if everyone can stay healthy, there's so much depth. And like I said, Javarius Ward knocks everybody down to where they need to be on that depth chart. So I'm cool with Verrett starting as long as he can stay healthy. And you could have an elite 1-2 combination on the corner. But I think Javarius Ward makes a huge difference. If that's your only acquisition, it's a good one. All I say is don't be Antonio Langham. When we got him, that was a huge free agent signing we had that one year.
I wanted to forget about that guy.
He was one of the worst corners I have ever seen in my entire life. I don't know how the Niners got bamboozled with that trade or signing, whatever, because he was from Cleveland, right? Prior to that, and he played out relatively well. He came to the 49ers, and it was just, oh my God. So hopefully Javarius Ward doesn't have that issue. But yeah, he has a chance to be really special, and whoever plays across from him is going to be key, because, like I said, if it's Verrett and Verrett stays healthy, damn, that would be nice.
I liked Antonio Langham when he was at Alabama. I think he was a really good cornerback. I think he helped them win the national championship that year, too. But sure, what do you think about Charvarius Ward and how he's going to help out the 49ers?
Oh, yeah. And for the record, Antonio Langham was a badass in college, and he was good on the Browns. He went to the Niners. He was one of the worst corners I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I almost forgot about that guy. Charvarius Ward, I'm really excited about the signing, because this is a guy who doesn't back down from number one wide receivers. I'm talking about guys like CeeDee Lamb, guys like Jamar Chase. I've seen him make plays on these big name guys, and just to bring in somebody with that type of swag in our cornerback room was much needed. I mean, I'm looking at this cornerback depth, and I can't think of a deeper cornerback room, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, at least on paper, since the 1994 Super Bowl season. Not saying that Ward is Deion Sanders, but I mean, I just love the overall depth in the quarterback room. And that now that we got Verrett back and all the youngsters that we picked up from last year and this year, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But really quick, before I talk about the impact of Travis Ward, if we're going to talk about bad 49er cornerbacks, we've got to go to Ahmed Plummer, don't we? I mean, he was a first round draft pick, and I mean, all I remember of Ahmed Plummer
he made
was
a Pro Bowl though.
Did he? Well, you know,
Darnell Walker, Tyrone Drakeford.
No. Michael Rumpf was a really bad corner.
Mike Rumpf was
really
horrible.
Well, maybe it's just me having flashbacks to the game against the Giants when Amani Toomer just torched them up and down the field throughout the whole game.
Oh yeah, I remember that one too.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's where I'm coming from. But no, the Travis Ward deal, I think Ted hit on most of it right off the bat. Right? I don't know if we can keep bringing him back because he makes all the really good points right off the bat, and then we all have to kind of figure our way out through afterwards. But no, totally. You've got Travis Ward's a strong man corner, and I think with the pass rush that the 49ers have, that's going to work out really well for them. And then it's also going to help out everybody else in the secondary. They're going to be able to roll coverages away from them and things like that. At least I think that's what they're expecting to be able to do. So I think it could have a major impact on the defense. Having somebody that can actually step up and get up in their face. That was one of the things I think that they struggled with last year. Even though they're winning games, they just didn't have a guy that could really – they had to play so soft that it allowed guys to run over the field on them. And I think it's going to be better for them here in 2022 as a result. And one other thing, too. I know Travis Ward, but I think the acquisition of Sam Womack, I think, is going to pay dividends for this team. Samuel Womack, if he can play the run, would be the 49ers' best option in the slot. He's a stud. He's a stud man cover guy.
And Ambry's a good man cover guy, and Jimmy Ward's a good man cover guy, and supposedly Leon O'Neal is a good man cover guy, and I think Tarvarius Moore is a pretty good man cover guy. So, yeah, we've got a lot of options for man cover in that secondary.
Yeah, the Ambry Thomas one's weird. He looked really good last year during training camp, and then they got into the season and he struggled with man, getting beat deep and stuff like that. So that was an interesting one. With Womack, he shows that he just has the speed to be able to keep up with the guys all over the field, and he's really good with his hands. So my only concern with him is his tackling and be able to support in the run from that nickel spot.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's pretty much a K1 doppelganger from combine measurements, like same wingspan, same height, same weight, same like 3-cone, all the quickness and everything. The only major difference is like K1 was a 4.5 guy and Womack is a 4.4 guy.
Yeah, and it's I just want to see him tackle. You didn't really get to see a whole lot of that out of him when he was at with the way where he played in
Toledo.
College. Yeah, Toledo, and so that's kind of what I want to see. That's my only concern with him is his run defense if he's in there in the nickel spot. So we'll see, because I think it's going to be fun to watch him and Denard and how that group plays out. Because if Jason Verrett is healthy and he's the guy that ends up playing, this whole defensive secondary is going to be really tough to figure out who's going to be where.
I've heard some talk of Mosley sliding to nickel, but it doesn't seem like they're really doing that, are they?
Well, it could be one of those things where they just didn't do it during OTAs and minicamp because that might be the direction they're going, but they want it's a time to give other guys reps to really get a good look at them. So maybe that's that's a guess of mine, but that would make sense if that's the direction that they're headed.
Now we just got to bubble wrap everybody for training
especially
camp.
Verrett.
Especially Verrett. Nobody play any games, if you play, I want as much padding as possible because
save him for the stretch run in the playoffs.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see much of him on the field throughout the beginning part of training camp. If anything, he might just be towards the end, like that last week, maybe two. So, but other than that, you guys have anything else that you want to throw out real quick?
Safety, Huff, Tarvarius Moore, Odom, Leon O'Neal Jr. What do you guys think?
It's going to be
Ward.
It's going to be Huff and Ward.
Yeah, I just don't see it being anybody else. I feel like I've seen enough of what's his name?
Tarvarius.
Yeah, he was a liability in coverage when he played, to be honest with you.
I was in the George Odom hive, but it doesn't seem like we're just got him for special teams. I don't know. We'll see. Quick question. Like, if Tarvarius Moore is good in coverage, like I was saying, that was sort of my feeling. Is there any reason you couldn't platoon strong safety just the same way you do it with Sam linebacker and nickel corner, like as your nickel package? Like you got Huff in there for base downs, and then bring in Tarvarius Moore with Womack or whoever as the nickel for nickel package?
I mean, you could. I don't know. I know, like in 2019, what they did was they brought in Moore. That was, they'd usually keep him as the single high safety, and they'd slide down Ward and Tart became more box defenders a lot of times with that. I could see him kind of doing something like that with Moore this year.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure. I think it's going to be. I think Hufanga is the guy that they want to be the starter there. I think they drafted him with the goal of him taking over this year. I think that's partly why he played so much in 2021. So
right on.
But yeah, I want to real quick. We're going to wrap it up, but I want to say thanks to everybody in the comment section. You guys have been great over there. But also Bashar, Aaron, Ted, I really appreciate you guys making the time to come on here and do this for an hour and 15 minutes with me, 16 minutes. I really appreciate it. You guys have been a lot of fun to talk to.
Thanks for having me
Thanks
on.
for having us on.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Not as energetic as I usually am. I'm a little sun crisp today, as you guys can see.
You get out there in the sun. Yeah, that's right.
A little bit.
Yeah. But if you guys could do me a favor, if you're watching the show, if you like what you're seeing here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then get over to 49ers.press Democrat and check that out as well. But that like button and the subscribe button, those are the two main ones for me, if you could please. And then also get over there to 49er Minded and 49ers First Takes and subscribe to their channel as well. And if you want to listen to Ted, make sure you jump on Twitter, and his Twitter handle is what he has on the screen right now, @TedH6, and he's a fun guy to get on there. He used to drive me crazy, but I like talking with him.
Hey, only when you were back in Mullins too much. That was it.
Hey, that was a mistake of mine. I said that earlier. That was definitely a mistake.
He drives Warriors haters crazy too, by the way.
Yeah. So I appreciate everybody though. If you guys just have a good rest of your Thursday night. I'm not sure if I'll be streaming tomorrow. We'll see, but I will definitely be back on Monday. And it's only when we get back to next week, it's 1 week until training camp starts. So looking forward to that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So have a great rest of your Thursday night, everybody. Take care. Thank you guys all again, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
See ya.